This is The Express with Gary Allen, your 360-degree view of the world. Now, here's your host, Gary Allen.
And good evening, everybody, and welcome to this edition of The Express. Glad to be with you. Hope you've had an interesting week since the last time we had a chance to talk. Got a great guest on tonight, Mr. Kevin Bowen, who's with the Indianapolis Colts. He's the writer, and he handles everything for them on the internet. I don't know if I'd like to have his job. I'd love to have his job just to be around the Colts and their cheerleaders, and, of course, he knows that. But before we get to Kevin, let's just talk a little bit about how you can get a hold of me at Facebook, Gary Allen, A-L-A-N, at YouTube.com, Gary Allen, The Express. You can hear this show and all the past shows that on there. Any show you want to listen to at all, from Wink Martindale right on up. Thursdays at 7 p.m., this program will repeat itself again on diversitybroadcastnetwork.com. And again, that's at 7 p.m. You can also go to progressivevoices.com, go to their demand app, and you will be able to catch all of this as you want. And before too long, I'm also going to be on another network that you'll be able to listen to things too. So without further ado, let me introduce my good friend from the Indianapolis Colts, Mr. Kevin Bowen. Kevin, welcome. Kevin? Is Kevin there? Is Kevin there? EW, do we have Kevin?
Shows him on the line.
Kevin, you want to try that call again, just for the heck of it? How are you doing, EW? Speaking of good people.
We're hanging in there. We'll try to get him back here in just a second for you.
That's okay. This is live radio. That's what it's all about. By the way, the candidate in Georgia
call has been forwarded to an automated voice messaging system.
Yeah, let's...
we'll try that again. Kevin will try. The candidate in Georgia seems to be winning so far. He has over 50% with about 60% of the vote in, I guess. If anybody has any results from that, please let us know. I'm just kind of anxious to find out what's going on in general. Tonight, we're going to be covering
Kevin
a number
Bowen.
of subjects. Yeah, Kevin, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. Sorry about that, Gary.
No, that's quite all right. Let me just, first of all, I just reintroduce you. Kevin has been on the show a number of times. He and I have become very good friends. He works for the Indianapolis Colts, a team that I hold near and dear to my heart. As I said, I don't know if I'd really like to have your job, but I certainly would like to be around the cheerleaders. That's for sure. And you know that.
Cheerleaders are going to the Dominican Republic for their calendar shoot here in a few weeks, so you got to try to wiggle your way into that trip.
Oh, hey, I tell you right now, man, I can always carry the bags. I do good on that. I've been in Dominican a few times in my life. Tonight, we're going to talk a little about everything NFL news, notes, and then we're also going to talk about the NFL draft. And, of course, we're going to include the Indianapolis Colts in with that. And for those of you that are wondering about Kevin and his background, he went to Indiana University. He's been with the Colts, about 5, almost 6 years now, right?
Yeah, since 2010, yeah.
Yeah, and he handles everything on the internet. If you go to Colts.com and you want to find out what's going on with the Indianapolis Colts, this is the cat you want to talk to. As I said, he's become a friend of mine. He's really a great gentleman, and I always enjoy talking to him because I can call him up and say, hey, what is going on? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? And it's always great to have an insider. Kevin, let's get right to it. A couple of weeks ago on my radio show here in Cocoa Beach, I had Brian Baldinger on from the NFL Network, and we talked about Tony Romo. Now, you're very close to Bob Lamey, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, you're now the quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts. You've never worked in the booth before in your life. You've done a number of interviews, and you've done all right with those. Suddenly, CBS hires you in a network war. And now you're the number one guy working along with Jim Nantz, and Phil Simms is out. I got to tell you something. I got a lot of problems with it on a number of levels. And it's not that I don't wish Tony Romo well. I do. But Brian Baldinger and, God, his name just escaped, Troy Aikman, both went to Europe to learn their jobs. Ex-football players, both of them. And, of course, Baldinger played for the Colts. He was a center when Ray Donaldson got injured. But they went to Europe to learn their job, to hone their craft, to cut their teeth. The same as you did when you were in Indiana, when you worked sporting events there and then eventually went on to the Colts. This guy's going to be thrown into the bailiwick right off as part of the number one team with Jim Nantz, which is not a bad slot. But don't you think, in all honesty, and Brian kind of agreed with me to a certain extent, that maybe they should have started him off on the third or fourth team and then gradually worked himself up? And the thing that irritates me the most is Phil Simms is outside looking in. Not that he needs to worry about money. He doesn't. But what a slap in the face to a guy that's been with CBS for 20 years.
Yeah, I was shocked. I'm a big kind of media nerd. I read Richard Deitch's media column from Sports Illustrated every Sunday night, and he's had some great insight on, this sort of move and what went into it. And for people that don't follow it that closely, you kind of laid it out there, Gary. The fact that he is immediately going to the number one team is shocking to me. I'll be honest, I haven't, seen too much of Tony Romo in front of a camera over the past few years. Of course, he's in the spotlight, but this, it's not like Dallas has ever made a deep playoff run with him until you really see him in the spotlight. And this is a huge ordeal that he's taking on, being the number one team, and he's going to be calling a Super Bowl here in a couple of years. I mean, CBS, I believe, calls a Super Bowl here in the next 2 seasons.
Right.
So you would assume that Nantz and Romo would have that role as the number one team. I agree with you, and you laid out Troy Aikman and kind of the stepping stones that he took to ascend to that number one role with Joe Buck and Fox. Again, I was really surprised that CBS did not start him off on a lower team. I'm not the biggest Phil Simms fan, to be honest with you, but at the same time, I don't think he all of a sudden deserves to be knocked off the entire ledge, if you will. I think that a misconception we have with sports announcers in general is they have to be qualified on the field to be a great announcer. And I just don't think that's true. I mean, two of my favorite NFL personalities right now, neither of them are color analysts, but both of them are analysts, is with NFL Network, Mike Mayock, and then with ESPN is Louis Riddick. I think both of those guys are tremendous on TV, provide great insight. Neither of them are perennial Pro Bowlers, but I would love to listen to them, over a 10, 15-time, Pro Bowl or what have you. So yeah, I was really surprised by this move, and frankly, I'm really curious to see how Romo does.
Yeah, and I like Mike Mayock myself. Frankly, I'm over the hairdo at ESPN, if you know who I'm referring to.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
I think Mel Kiper retired a long time ago, but forgot to let the world know. I think he just phones it in. But here's the thing that is most shocking. Now, if you take the rumors that are true, and I only know them as rumors. You may know more fact than I do. You're behind the scenes. And there may be something that went on behind the scenes why Phil Simms is out and this guy is in. But if you listen to the rumors, supposedly if he wants to, and a team calls him and he wants to go play for him, he can leave the booth. I got to believe that that's not true. I can't see CBS signing him to a contract, even for a year, to see how he's going to do, first of all, and get rid of Phil Simms, and then say, well, if the fourth week of the season, the Buffalo Bills need a quarterback, go ahead, be our quarterback. And then they call up, hey, Phil, do you want to come back? I don't see that. I think that's just an unsubstantiated rumor. It was floating around for quite a while. I'm sure you heard of it. But I agree with you. I don't think you need to be an all-pro anything to be an analyst. As a matter of fact, I really kind of resent sometimes the play-by-play guys being former NFL players. Most of the broadcasters that I grew up with, Chuck Thompson, who was the voice of the Baltimore Colts, he wasn't a pro football player by any stretch of the imagination. Most of the guys that did, because I grew up in South Florida that covered the Miami Dolphins, they weren't former pro football players when the Dolphins first came along, and neither were a lot of the broadcasters throughout the country. Bob Lamey, I don't know Bob's background, but did Bob play football other than maybe high school or something?
No, yeah. I think with Romo too, I mean, it seemed like he was kind of I mean, he was really debating playing another season. I mean, you heard the rumors, obviously, with Houston and Denver. I mean, there are other teams thrown into the mix. So I know he had a conference call, I believe, and said, there's a 1% chance that he might, still want to play or whatever. But I would like to know the contractual obligations on what CBS, inked him to. I know he had the back injury, and the back injury is something that's very serious for any professional athlete, regardless the sport that it is. I can't see Romo getting back into it. I can't see a team really all of a sudden just thinking that he's going to be in game shape and ready to play, hopping out of the booth at the drop of a hat. But this is in the sports media world, this was a bit of a stunning move that all of a sudden a guy not named Peyton Manning, retires from the game of football and immediately goes into the number one broadcasting role. And what is his experience going to be leading up to that? It's not like CBS has a slate of college games that are a month before the NFL season starts. I mean, he might call a college game or two before week one of the NFL. He might call a preseason game or two, but I mean, all eyes are going to be on him from day one. He's not going to be easing into this by any means. And as you know, Gary, I mean, that number one slot, that's a lot of 425 games. He's going to be in the national spotlight for the vast majority of the 2017 season.
Exactly. And as far as him coming back and playing, look how many teams in the NFL that need quarterbacks. The Jets, Denver,
that's a great point,
Houston. I mean, Houston is just, in all honesty, I hate to say this. Oh, how I hate to say this. But they're just a quarterback away from probably going to the dance.
Yeah, no, they are. And that's what really surprised me about the Romo decision is I felt like he could have walked into Houston. They have an established running back in Lamar Miller. They have a pretty good wideout in DeAndre Hopkins. They have the best defense in the NFL. Without J.J. Watt last year, they were, one of the best defenses in the NFL. I know they lost A.J. Boye, kind of their stud corner to free agency, but Houston doesn't need much before they kind of, I think, ascend to that number 2 spot in the AFC, which I think is kind of wide open. I think we would all agree New England is in a class by itself. Pittsburgh, knocking on their heels. The AFC South, you aren't really sure who the favorite is with Houston, going with Tom Savage, it looks like, start their season. And then out west, you would think Oakland is still going to be a pretty formidable team along with Kansas City. So, I was surprised. I thought that when the Osweiler, when his play really, really never got anywhere close to on track throughout the 2016 season, and you saw kind of Romo take this backseat to Dak Prescott, in my eyes, it seemed like a match made in heaven for Romo to, still live in Texas, but go over and play for the Texans and potentially make them, if he's healthy, an instant contender to make a deep AFC South or AFC playoff run.
Right. And I don't like to say that, and I admire Houston a great deal. But let's face it, they're in our division. I wish them well as long as it's not against us, Besides, our cheerleaders are a lot better looking than theirs, and you can tell the ladies I said that, one of these days, one of them is going to be listening, and they're going to go, who is that dummy? Changing gears just a little bit. Adrian Peterson. What is the latest with Adrian Peterson? Now, we know that Lynch is gone with the Raiders, as far as I know. Did he sign the contract with the Raiders?
Nothing official, so I still think there are a few hurdles there. Yeah, with Peterson, I would expect him to wait after the draft. I think that's kind of the smartest move for him. It's a very deep running back class here in 2017. I think he'd be wise to wait after the draft to really assess then, what are the big needs, or what teams, still have the big running back needs. I think that's the smartest move. I mean, I'll be honest, I know he came back from a pretty, significant knee injury very quickly, and the Colts were actually the first game back that he had in week 15 last year, but he just didn't look like the same runner. And I know he struggled weeks 1 and weeks 2 of last season as well. So I don't think it's a slam dunk that you're going to get the same Adrian Peterson. Now, I know he's defied the odds before from a physical standpoint and coming back from the ACL injury and, setting the NFL rushing record, but still, I think he's got a ways to go before you can all of a sudden just be like, oh yeah, he's a slam dunk to being a definite big time back again in this league.
Yeah, I know the Colts shut him down. I don't remember the numbers, Kevin, but I'm sure that I don't think he got much more than 40 or 50 yards on the day. We're talking to Kevin Bowen from the Indianapolis Colts. You're listening to the Express. Gary Allen with you. Um, excuse me. I don't think he got more than 50 yards that day, didn't he?
No, he really struggled that afternoon. And honestly, that was probably the best that the Colts played all season long. It's kind of one of those things where I think he rushed it back a little early, thinking Minnesota was still in the NFC North playoff picture. I'm curious to see where he ends up. He's a future Hall of Famer, probably a first ballot Hall of Famer as well. And I know watching Frank Gore these past few years, Frank Gore still got a lot left in the tank, but it's a rare occurrence to see running backs north of the age of 30 that have had significant knee injuries, still be able to run at that level.
Right. And again, it's something we're going to get into when we get to the draft about the running back situation. I hate to say this, but the number one guy in my book is still Delvin Cook. I watched him tear apart my Hurricanes. That was horrible to watch. McCaffrey, I'm not that happy on. And by the way, speaking of which, did you see where he's declining any workouts with teams privately?
I did see that. Yeah, I think he put up some pretty good numbers, at the combine to where it makes sense for him, not to feel like he's got to rush and definitely, have these private workouts and have these pro days. I understand his thinking with that.
Right.
And right now, the guy that is moving up in mock drafts.
Really? The guy that I really am not crazy about, and I watched a lot of him play, is the young man from LSU, Fournette. I just don't see him being this great runner in the NFL. He doesn't have that burst of speed, that extra step. You take the inside move, you see the hole, you go, boom. He doesn't have that quick speed. He can go to if he gets to the outside, he's got some quick speed, but inside the tackles, he doesn't have that burst of speed to get through the line where Delvin Cook will tear you apart. And to give you an idea, Delvin's only 5'10". Fournette is 6 foot. I just think Delvin Cook is going to be heads and heels above everybody else in the running back slot, unless there's a sleeper somewhere in there, because I know we need to draft someone in the running back situation, but we're going to get to that a little bit later on. Here's my question to you, my good friend. When's the next time the Colts play the Raiders?
Play the Raiders. They just played them this past season in Week 16. I believe that they could play them again in 2 years out in Oakland. And I say Oakland because it sounds like that Vegas stadium, it isn't going to be ready. And I believe it's kind of up in the air on exactly where the Raiders are going to play going forward with that lease with the Coliseum and whatnot. I believe the Colts are definitely going to play in Vegas. I think it's 2021 is the next time that they're going to be out there, and Oakland, should be in that, or the Raiders, I should say, should be in that stadium by then. But yeah, that's kind of how the layout is, and we'll see, when exactly those plans get finalized for that stadium for Vegas, and when the Raiders are able to permanently move there.
The reason I bring it up is there's a lot of controversy that the NFL for so many years stayed away from Las Vegas. And for obvious reasons. As a matter of fact, up until a few years back, locals couldn't even bet on UNLV basketball or football or anything to do with UNLV that would have anything to do with gambling. Do you see a potential problem, not maybe for the veterans so much, although you never know, with some of the young men that are coming into the league, suddenly, boom, exhibition game or otherwise, they're in Las Vegas? Do you see potential problems there? I was there, by the way, when the NBA had their All-Star game there, and talk about some of the most undesirable people on earth went in there and would go to restaurants and walk out on bills before they would even pay them. Do you see any problems at all with having a team in Las Vegas?
Yeah, I mean, I would be worried about having a 9-man roster and trying to police every single one of those players. I think one thing that the NFL is probably more of a problem than the Raiders specifically is what happens on game day. Speaking from a person that is in, NFL stadiums every week, you got to take into account how much game day personnel aren't hired by the team, but are specifically hired just for game day. Lucas Oil Stadium has their own game day personnel. The Superdome, all these stadiums have people that have normal or other 9-to-5 jobs. You could be a school teacher during the week, and then maybe you're some sort of statistician on game day, or maybe you're in charge of, handling the booth reviews, doing something that involves a significant part of the game, but you aren't employed by the team. Well, what if Bobby Joe works at Caesar's Palace as his day job, but then on Sundays he's working for the Raiders? I think that's something that is kind of interesting and something that you worry about in gambling, and especially being out in Vegas. That I think is going to be something that not a lot of people are talking about, but something to keep in the back of people's minds. And Jack Del Rio and the Raiders, I do think that is something that every city has their pros and cons from a free agency standpoint. But if you're a player and you've got a family of 4 and you're hitting the open market and you want to raise your family, do you want to raise them in Vegas? That could be a major drawback. Now, conversely, if you're a 24-year-old single guy and you're a free agent, maybe you want to live in Vegas. Who knows?
It's not a bad. It's not a bad place. I lived there for 10 years. It's not a bad place to live. I'll be honest with you. And there's an awful lot about Las Vegas people don't realize. They just see the Strip and the gambling. There are people, folks, that never go to the Strip. Their jobs have nothing to do with the casinos or the hotels. They're plumbers and doctors and lawyers and stuff, and they never go near the. I mean, do you know, Kevin? There are more churches and synagogues in the Las Vegas area than any city in the United States.
I have heard that now that you mentioned that. Yeah, and you're going to have players that, of course, fall in love with Vegas and want to live there. But at the same time, you're going to have guys that just think of that stereotype, or their wives or their significant others that think of kind of the negative part of, raising a family per se in Vegas, and they're not going to want to go there. And in a whole different other spectrum, the same thing could be said about London. The major drawbacks that putting a team in London would have on a team trying to attract free agents and, working guys out in a given week and whatnot. Now, I know Vegas's issues, in quotes, is totally different than what a team in London would face. But I'm very curious to see how the Raiders do in Vegas. I mean, that's 4 teams very close together. When you think about the Cardinals, the Chargers, the Rams, and now the Raiders.
Right.
I think the Raiders do have an advantage with an established market in Southern California, and I think that they have, a very passionate fan base that can still get, a pretty good amount of season ticket holders to go to Vegas. But we'll see how Vegas embraces, not only an NFL team but an NHL team as well.
Yeah, I can tell you that there are a lot of gangs in Las Vegas that relate to the Raiders. The Raiders have a home base there as well. And they probably will do very well, at least. Excuse me, I'm having problems tonight. At least the cheerleaders will be cute.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, I mean, the girls in Vegas are very attractive. Sorry, folks. Here's the problem. Something you brought up. I wasn't going to mention it. London. Why would the NFL? I still do not understand Roger Goodell's thinking on this. Every team that goes and plays in London. Now, the Colts haven't done it yet that I'm aware of. Oh, yeah, they did.
The Colts did it this past year, yeah.
Yeah. They suffer from fatigue coming back. They really do. How are the Colts? How are you coming back?
Yeah, I was actually surprised. The Colts came back and didn't have their bye week in the week after playing in London. They were the first team to not have their bye week in the game after London, and they came back and they were able to beat the Chicago Bears the following week. So I mean that was extremely impressive that the Colts came back and won that game over the Chicago Bears. So they were the first team in, I guess, since 2007, I believe, is when the international series started over in London. The Colts were the first team to go over there and then come back, not have their bye week, and then beat the Chicago Bears at home. I believe the Colts, I want to say they went 3-2 in the 5 games immediately after coming back from London. These are kind of my thoughts on London. I personally had a really great time over there. I do think that there is a fan base over there that is passionate.
Yeah.
I think they could embrace a team. I think logistically it's an absolute nightmare in having a team over there, trying to balance out the schedule. What do you do if this team makes the playoffs? What do you do if they're playing Seattle in the first round and Seattle has to come out there on a short week, or vice versa? I mean, the competitive advantages and disadvantages are just too immense, I think, to having a permanent team over there. But you got to tap into the international market. I mean, the NBA has done an absolutely great job, and part of it is because they have tons of international players in the league that are high-level players. But think how global the game of basketball is. And, part of that is just basketball, frankly, is easier to play at a global level than it is American football. There's a lot of resources that go into playing, game of 11-on-11 American football. There's not as many resources to playing 5-on-5 basketball. But I think you have to maintain that international market. You have to continue to tap into that. And I think the best case scenario to do that is to have 8 games over there every year. That would mean that, every 4 years, a team is playing a home game in London. I think that would make the most sense. I think that would ease, home fan bases, home season ticket holders who are, so afraid of giving up a home game for one of their season tickets. I think that would be kind of the best case scenario to go about it. But again, just like Vegas, I'm very curious because it seems like London is the most obvious choice for the next city for an NFL team. Is there any more traction on that in the coming years?
Yeah, I don't think San Diego will ever get a football team again. I don't think St. Louis will ever get a football team again. I can think of a couple of cities that shouldn't have football teams. Actually, I can think of a couple of cities that shouldn't have NBA teams. And speaking of which, just for a change of pace here, Larry Bird was a little upset last night.
He was. That's probably about the most emotion you're going to see out of Larry Bird. I always find it odd in NBA playoff games that the general managers, team presidents sit in the stands. It's always weird to me at road games. Think if there's some drunk, obnoxious fan close to Larry Bird. I mean, I don't know. That just seems weird to me. I feel like visiting teams should give them a suite. At least I know in the NFL, every visiting owner gets a suite for those games. But yeah, the Pacers had their chance game 1. I'm a big Pacers fan, and you aren't going to get many opportunities to beat Cleveland on their home court. And we'll see if the Pacers can make things interesting Thursday night when they get the Cavs back in Indy.
Well, I don't know what my Celtics are going to do, but they're hurting right now a little bit. Isaiah Thomas, of course, lost his sister to a tragic automobile accident, and our thoughts and prayers go out in that direction. Andrew Luck admitted yesterday or the day before, you have the inside track on this one, that his shoulder got hurt in 2015. What's the story there, and is he going to be ready and 100%? And how are we going to keep that man on his 2 feet?
Yeah, that was the biggest story to come out of Monday. The Colts started their off-season program on Monday, and Andrew Luck was, to be honest with you, very candid in the details he kind of revealed about how, when the shoulder injury first happened, and after the 2015 season when he lacerated his kidney in early November, there were talks to possibly having surgery after the 2015 season, but he thought. After doing a bunch of research, that intense rehab, I think was the phrase that he used. He thought that would be the best method. And when you think about it, he didn't have the normal wear and tear of a full season. The kidney injury obviously sidelined him for 7 games, or he missed 7 games in total, to the point where I think his shoulder, he thought with some rehab could be good to go. And last year, if you watched him, I mean, I know he was limited in practice, but I mean, yeah, he really had the second best statistical season of his career. I mean, he had the career high completion percentage. His touchdown to interception ratio is the second best of his career. So he played at a very high level from an individual standpoint based off his first 5 seasons in the NFL. So, but I think when he obviously had some re-aggravations in 2016, and I think when he sat down again, surgery was the best way to go. And I think with luck, he's going to be scaled back during the offseason. I'd fully expect him to not have his normal workload. He used to be, really taking every first-team snap, to be honest with you. And I don't expect that to be the case when the Colts will really ramp things up here in the coming months. But the expectation is for him to be fully healthy for the entire 2017 season. And I see no reason why he won't be out there week 1. And, hopefully for Colts fans' sake, it'll be similar to Drew Brees, a guy that, had a, serious shoulder surgery on his throwing shoulder and still was able to come back and perform at a very high level.
Yeah, he seems to be able to handle the pain management very well within himself. A lot of athletes, of course, do. Let's get to the NFL draft, and we're talking to Kevin Bowen from the Indianapolis Colts, also a dear friend of mine. Defense, it's loaded this year. I mean, it is really loaded, and I know that that's where the Colts have to look. And before we get into specific players, where are you going to be on draft day? Do they let you in the war room, or do you have to stay on the outside?
They do not let me into the war room. That is a place that I have not been inside of. I feel like it's pretty secretive. We do some radio. We'll do radio Thursday and Friday night with Bob Lamey and Matt Taylor, our sideline reporter, in games. So, we will be doing some radio here in Indianapolis until the Colts pick on Thursday night. They pick 15th overall. And then Friday night until they pick again on Friday. So I think they're 46 overall, I want to say, in the second round. So the Colts have 7 picks in the first 5 rounds, which is a lot of draft capital that they are not used to having. So, like you said, it's an extremely defense-heavy draft.
Oh, yeah.
The Colts have to find, building blocks for that defense going forward. So I expect that to be the main focus when the draft does roll around here a week from Thursday.
Yeah, I hope they can find that edge rusher. Dwight Freeney's gone.
I would say that's the biggest key.
Yeah, Robert Mathis is gone. Dwight Freeney's been gone for a number of years. They just signed. Please remind me, sir. The gentleman
Jamal Sheard and John Simon were the 2 outside linebackers that the Colts signed in free agency. But those guys are guys that have played, kind of second fiddle roles. Granted, for 2 of the better defenses in the NFL in Houston with Simon, and then Jamal Sheard comes over from New England. But, as you know, Gary, and you've watched the NFL evolve over the years, I mean, if you don't have a pass rush, you don't have a chance.
No.
And to find the pure pass rushers in this league, you got to find them through the draft.
Right.
And if you go back to free agency this year, names like Nick Perry from Green Bay and Chandler Jones from Arizona and Melvin Ingram from San Diego, those guys didn't hit the open market. And they were the best pass rushers that were bound for free agency, and their teams re-signed them. I mean, teams just don't let elite pass rushers go into the open market. So that's why if you're going to find them, you got to find them through the draft. So if the right outside linebacker is there for the Colts, you got to take that, and you got to try to do what you did with, like you said earlier, Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis. Draft your own, let those guys pin their ears back and get after the quarterback.
And we also signed, and the name escapes me right now. We talked about it earlier in the day. A guy who's going to help stop the run, which has also been one of our major problems. In between the tackles have been a major problem. We haven't been able to stop the run for a very, very long time. Even in our Super Bowl years, we weren't able to stop the run. So, we've got to get after it. We've got to get some great players. Will Cleveland go with Myles Garrett? Or will they tempt fate and go with somebody else? Because they need a quarterback bad also.
They need a quarterback bad. I think they will go with Myles Garrett. I know they also have the 12th overall pick, so I'm interested to see what they do there. I mean, Garrett seems like a slam dunk. He seems like clearly the top prospect in this draft class. I think with Cleveland sitting there at 12, and they have a lot of picks, going forward.
Mm-hmm.
If Mitch Trubisky is their guy and they need to move back up to number 5 to get him, they have enough ammo to where they and if they feel like, Patrick Mahomes or Deshaun Kaiser or, one of these other quarterbacks is their guy, they can get him at 12 as well. So Myles Garrett, to me, and I've seen some NFL scouts say he's the highest rated prospect since Andrew Luck. So I don't think you should be foolish at all and think twice about taking Myles Garrett. I know some of the rumors have kind of grown over the past few weeks about what they should do and are they having second thoughts about taking Garrett. But for me, I would be turning in that card and I'd take the pass rusher out of Texas A&M.
But remember, Kevin, it is Cleveland.
They are the Cleveland Browns, and the Colts do play the Cleveland Browns this year. So the Colts will get a look at who that number 1 pick is, whether that is Myles Garrett or a Browns shock the world and do something that only Cleveland would do.
At number 6 is the first place that I see where a quarterback might go because the Jets are desperate for a quarterback. They are as desperate as any team in the NFL for a quarterback. They're a long way off from being a playoff team, but you can't begin that rebuild without having a good offensive line and B, a quarterback to command the field. Do you see a quarterback going there?
Yeah, I think that's where Trubisky could go, the kid out of North Carolina. It seems like the Jets are pretty high on him. The Colts played the Jets last year in early December, a Monday Night Football game.
And, I remember that.
Ryan, and I think Bryce Petty got booed off the field, or Brian Fitzpatrick got booed off the field, and Bryce Petty got booed, and Christian Hackenberg didn't feel comfortable with, and Geno Smith is now gone. I mean, it's crazy the revolving doors the Jets have had at the quarterback position over the last really just 12 months, because Ryan Fitzpatrick had a really nice 2015 season. But once that saga kind of happened, when Fitzpatrick, was looking like he was going to hold out and whatnot, it's been downhill since then. So I think that's the first domino we're going to see in this draft. It seems like, Solomon Thomas and Jamal Adams and Leonard Fournette and maybe Marshawn Lattimore, those guys seem to be right around top 5 picks.
Right.
But the real first domino, I think, happens with the Jets, because once that first quarterback goes, I think that's when quarterback-needy teams in the teens and the later half of the first round, they start to get antsy and potentially move up.
The one guy that I wish had stayed in school, who is in the draft, and that's Brian Kaya from the University of Miami. I wish he had stayed at Miami one more year. He does not have a good pocket presence about himself, and I know he's going to get probably drafted by somebody. But I just don't see him being an NFL starter right now or even 2 years from now. And here's the thing that really is amazing. Back when I was a young man, a very young man, like in my teens, even your first-round draft pick, whether it be on defense or offense or whatever, they never started to begin with. And then all of a sudden, because of the the explosion of salaries, suddenly that first-round draft pick better be somebody that is going to start right away. But yet we are getting quarterbacks this last couple of years, except for Prescott. You're getting quarterbacks that are not ready, NFL ready by any stretch, although there were a couple of exceptions last year. I mean, is it the style that's going on in college football? I mean, you're closer to the college game than I am in a sense. Is it the style of what they're being coached? Because none of these guys are coming out like Andrew that are in a pro-ready offense already in college.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it dates back really to the high school level now. I mean, there's a little bit of high school football that I watch. I mean, teams are spreading you out and playing spread offenses. And then the high school game is preparing these guys for the college game. And these college offenses are so spread and so up-tempo. I mean, you can probably count on one hand how many big-time college football programs don't have some implementation of a spread look to their offensive system. And, Luck, of course, came from a pro style. Carson Wentz came from a pro style at North Dakota State. I think that's why, people overlooked maybe his level of competition and thought, well, he's pro ready with the system that he played in. So I think that's something that a guy like Patrick Mahomes, his quarterback out of Texas Tech, is,
Right.
It seems to be a late riser and a guy that could go in the team. He comes from that air raid offense at Texas Tech. How ready is he going to be?
Right.
Yeah, I know the Colts drafted LaRaven Clark, an offensive lineman out of Texas Tech last year, and he came from that air raid system, which meant that he wasn't in a three-point stance very often. I mean, they throw the football, 80, 90% of the time, and when they do run it, they're running it, out of a lot of pass blocking looks. So
Right.
that's something to keep in mind. I think it's a big reason why this is one of the weaker offensive line draft classes in a while. You don't see the same technique out of offensive linemen that you did, 5-10 years ago. And I think it's a big reason why we've seen a lot of deep wide receiver classes in recent years, because more receivers are getting on the field. Better athletes are playing the receiver position. Whereas in the collegiate game, you're seeing the reliance on defenses having to be sideline to sideline guys, plenty of speed on the field. And now NFL teams are looking for those hybrid linebackers and looking for those, smaller guys that can cover a wide ground when NFL teams do decide to spread you out and give you a multiple receiver look. So, yeah, I would say how college football has evolved and changed, in the past decade or so is a major reason why we haven't seen as many day one ready quarterbacks.
Right. Okay. I know you're going to let us in on a secret. So we're talking to Kevin Bowen from the Indianapolis Colts, NFL insider as well, and a good friend of mine. You're going to let me in on a secret, and I promise not to tell anybody else. We're not going offense. We're not going offense at pick 15, right? I mean, we're not going to go offense, right?
I would hope. It sounds like if you're the one pulling the strings, Dalvin Cook might be the guy, but
he ain't going to be there.
Outside linebacker and cornerback are the two positions that I keep on coming back to, especially corner. I know it's something we haven't gotten into too much tonight, but Avonte Davis is entering a contract year. A corner is needed, not only one, but I think two.
Right.
We just talked about how the NFL has changed over the years. You got to have plenty of corners. And the cornerback position, those guys can help your pass rush. And the Colts need some corners big time. So I look at those two positions.
Yeah, Lattimore's not going to be there.
No, he
Wilson,
won't.
Quincy Wilson probably won't be there either.
Right. Gary and Conley's a name out of Ohio State that I think some guys are high on. The Colorado corner, I can't pronounce his name, but I know he's up there. Kevin King, the corner out of Washington, is another name that I've seen thrown around kind of in the middle of the first round. So,
Sidney Jones.
Yes. Yeah, the problem with Jones is he tore his Achilles and working out earlier in the draft process. I think some teams are obviously scared of that. So it's a very deep cornerback group this year. Chuck Pagano mentioned that at the league meetings a few weeks back. Chuck's a former defensive backs coach, so I fully expect the Colts to tap into that and probably tap into it twice once the draft rolls around next week.
I still would like to see us get an edge rusher with that very first pick, though. I'll be honest with you. I really do. I loved it when Freeney was there. Oh, man, that guy out of Syracuse. I used to watch him against the Canes when he was at Syracuse, and I absolutely adored it. Do you see any – I mean, I'm looking at the first 10 picks, and then the Bills have the 10th pick. Do you see anything going on, fallback, trade into the first 10 for anything? Do you hear anything out there that somebody is suddenly getting high on one person? And who, in your opinion, is dropping like a lead balloon in this draft?
I'm kind of surprised by how much Reuben Foster, the inside linebacker out of Alabama, has dropped. He got sent home from the NFL Combine for really, I don't think, a reason that would drop him. Some mock drafts had him as a top 5 pick. I saw early on, and all of a sudden he's down kind of in the middle. The middle of the first round.
Right.
I think you're inevitably going to get a run on quarterbacks at some point. I think the early teens is kind of where we've seen that.
Right.
And I think, and I mentioned it earlier, Christian McCaffrey's rising on draft boards. I kind of set the over-under at 4.5 combined quarterbacks and running backs that could go before the Colts pick. And obviously the Colts would love that to hit the over. But when you think about
well, who do you think? Who do you think we're going to take? I mean, Peppers.
Yeah, no, Derek Barnett, the outside linebacker at Tennessee, is the name that I keep coming back to. I know he doesn't have freakish, combine type drills, but I look at his consistency and his production in the SEC, and that's a pretty good barometer in my eyes. So yeah, Derek Barnett out of Tennessee, I think is a pretty special player coming off the edge. So he's a name that I think if he gets called at 15 next week, Colts fans should be pretty happy.
What did you who really surprised you in the combine? Because I know unless you were on vacation, you were there every day.
I was there. I mean, I would say your guy, Christian McCaffrey, who you've talked about, I mean, he was tremendous on the 3-cone drill and just showing off his agility. And I think people look at him as a serious threat out of the backfield and how, versatile offenses want to be nowadays in the NFL. I think McCaffrey is a serious weapon at the NFL level. So I think he would probably be a guy. I thought the tight end position is extremely deep this year. And that's good news because, after they traded Dwayne Allen, all of a sudden they were kind of in the tight end sweepstakes. So
I still don't understand that. Trading him okay, but to New England?
Sometimes, unfortunately, you can't, be too picky with your trade partner. So
can you explain that? Kevin, can you please explain that to me, or have Chuck call me on the phone and say, Gary, this is why to New England, of all the teams we're going to do trades with, the New England Patriots?
Yeah, no, I understand what you're getting at, but I think it's just one of those things where New England made an offer. Bill Belichick has always been extremely high on Dwayne Allen. And I think that's ultimately what it was. They were a willing trade partner. They gave up a 4th-round pick, which, in my eyes is probably a little bit higher than I would have given up for Allen. So the Colts can go out and potentially spend a 4th-round pick on a tight end, and all of a sudden they could get, Dwayne Allen, without maybe the injury concerns and get a younger guy on a much cheaper deal. They were very high on Jack Doyle and Eric Swope. So I think that was kind of what played into the reasoning.
And where did Eric go? And where did Eric go to school, Kevin?
As you know, Eric Swope is a graduate of the U. So
Thank you.
So I think the arrow pointing up on Swope and Doyle, the deepness and the depth of that 2017 tight end group, which definitely caught Chuck Pagano's eye down at the combine, was a major reason why Chris Ballard pulled the trigger on that trade just a few days before free agency started.
How is he to get along with? I know you have to talk to him. I know you've interviewed him. How is he?
Yeah, he's great. I mean, he checks off all the boxes for me. I know Jim Irsay is really, in particular, extremely impressed just by his personality and his ability to be very relatable. And you think about a GM, I mean, you have to be extremely relatable to players, coaches, agents, really a multitude of people. So I think that's something that has really caught Jim Irsay's eye, and something that I know was attractive to him in the interview process. And it's something that's held true now, nearly 2.5 months onto the job. Yeah,
compared to someone else who had the job prior, who well, I guess the only person who ever put it succinctly was our former punter, which I'm mad at him for retiring. He just said, good riddance to garbage.
Yeah, I would say Pat McAfee made it pretty clear his thoughts on Ryan Grigson. So this is going to be a big draft for Chris Ballard. I mean, 7 draft picks in the first 5 rounds. He knows how important this is to kind of the further retooling of the roster. So I'm anxious to see, how active Ballard is and what his approach is come draft time.
Okay, let's talk about where do you see this draft going as far as any surprises at all? I mean, there's a lot of guys out there that are senior, a lot of years in long and tooth in the NFL. Where do you see this draft really heading? Do you see any major trades in the first 10 to 15, 20 picks? Do you see the Colts falling back and maybe picking up some draft picks in later rounds now that they have a number of 4th-rounders to play with? Or do you think that Ballard is going to take all of those 4th-round picks and make something good for the team out of it? Because let's face it, your 3rd, 4th, and 5th-round guys sometimes are your meat and potatoes. They're the guys that take you to the dance besides the big names like like Andrew Luck and Peyton Manning and Reggie Wayne, etc. These are the guys that help you get there. They're the solid. They're the blue collar guys with the lunch pails every day coming to work. What do you see happening?
Yeah, I expect Chris Ballard to be a very willing trade partner, especially moving back in the draft. It's hard to really predict draft trades until the board starts to fall. You can't really know who's going to be there and just how attractive your trade package is going to look until, guys start being taken. So it's hard to, again, predict trades. But Ballard and Jim Irsay made it very clear at the league meetings that they're going to be active. So yeah, we'll see kind of what happens going forward, just with how active the Colts are as being trade partners. Because with 7 picks in 5 rounds, you do have the ability to definitely move up and move back, which is something that the Colts want to do.
One question, because this guy was not at the Combine, Joe Mixon. Do you think that was unfair for the NFL to exclude him for something that happened a number of years ago? It didn't happen this past year.
Yeah, a little bit. I think it would have been nice for all the teams to kind of get their eyes on Mixon in one place that have got a lot of that out of the way. But, at the same time, the Combine has their regulations for the type of prospects that they want to bring in there. So that's going to be just such an intriguing case study to see, on probably Friday night in the second and third round, just where Mixon goes, because you ask a lot of people, and just purely from a talent standpoint, he's a first-round talent. But obviously the off-the-field issues are extremely serious, or at least he had a major incident on video, and I think that's going to scare a lot of teams. And I think owners are going to be more likely to decide on, whether their team can pull the trigger or not on Mixon.
Yeah, and there's always that one owner or that one coach that says, well, I can take them and I can straighten them out. And by the way, folks, it's not that Mixon robbed a bank or committed murder or raped somebody. I believe it was he hit a young lady in the bar or something, but she provoked it. That doesn't mean you have the right to hit her by any stretch. Don't get me wrong, but I just thought, like you, that maybe he should have been allowed to. He seemed to be remorseful of what he did, and I think at least just from an interview point of view, having him there. When you're at the Combine and you're at home, because Indianapolis is where the Combine is, how much do you get a chance to talk to some of these young men that are there for the workouts and to show their wares for the scouts? Do you get an opportunity to talk to anybody, or are you just kind of restricted from that?
Yeah, each prospect meets the media for 15 minutes, which is always nice, just to kind of put a face with a name and try to talk to some of these guys. So yeah, obviously nothing as extensive as the formal interviews that teams conduct with 60 prospects. They can spend 15 minutes with up to 60 prospects. We're nowhere near as accessible as that, but we do get a chance to talk with these guys, and it's just fun to kind of hear about some of these guys in college and kind of get a better feel of exactly who they are, and try to get a read on some of these guys, and see kind of who, really, to be honest with you, who the future of the NFL is going to be.
Mm-hmm. Do you get it when you talk to any of them? Do they ever express a desire? We're here at Indianapolis. I wouldn't mind playing here.
Yeah, I think you always get that, but at the same time, a lot of these guys' answers are very scripted.
Yeah,
their agent has coached them up to make sure that Bobby Jones isn't making any mistakes from what he's saying, because this is a job interview. It's a huge job interview that these prospects are embarking on. So yeah, it is nice to hear that, and you do have guys that'll tell you which teams they've met with and have had interviews with, but at the same time, they're going to be pretty careful about what they're telling you.
Yeah. Hey, I have a question here from one of our listeners, and it's a pretty good one. During the season, what's your average day like for you?
Honestly, a lot of it depends on the day of the week. Everything is so regimented in the NFL. Mondays, it's a lot of recap of watching the previous game. You have media availability late on Monday, usually about 5 Eastern. Tuesdays are typically the players' day off, so that's probably the quietest day of the week. You kind of close the book on the previous game, and then you start looking ahead to the next week. Wednesday is your first practice, first media availability of the week. We typically tape our weekly TV show that day. Thursday is the same thing, a practice, media availability. Friday, the players are usually out of the building by about noon or 1. Practice in the morning, final injury report, stuff like that. And if it's a road game, you travel on Saturday. And if it's a home game, you get Saturday off. So, very busy, but very scripted. Pretty much the same thing every week, unless you got a game on a Thursday or a Monday. And, that's kind of the grind for really, 20 straight weeks, and then potentially a few more if you're able to make the playoffs and make a deep playoff run.
Yeah, I'm praying this year. Kevin, I've been a Colt fan, as you know, since 1963, and I have gone up and down the coals. You know that if it wasn't for a missed call by a referee, the 1967 Colts would have played in Super Bowl 2, 3, and 5.
Wow, I did not know that.
They missed a field. The Green Bay Packers actually missed the field goal by a couple of inches, but the refs had a bad view of it, a bad angle, and they called it good when it was bad. Otherwise, the Colts would have been in the first 3 of the first 5 Super Bowls. And I've gone up and down with the Colts. I lost $700 when they lost Super Bowl 3. Had to borrow that money from my dad in order to pay that off. So I quickly became a non-gambling type of person.
$700 is quite a lot of money.
Yeah, and I was a junior in high school, but I was so convinced the Colts were going to beat the New York Jets. But that was then. This is now. I think, like you, that we need to go defense. I wish Jonathan Allen would be there. I wish some of these other outside rushers would be there. If Delvin Cook is there, he's not going to be there. That's the way I would go. But that's just my opinion, because I think, eventually Frank is going to have to hang up the cleats one of these days. And Dalvin Cook is very good. Of course, there may be other running backs later rounds or next year. You just never know. But I'm really looking forward to the draft. I wish somehow I could communicate with you during that time period, but your cell phone is buzzing off the hook and I can't get a hold of you. And I do try, but I just can't ever get through to you. Although you did return my call last year. But we've been talking to Kevin Bowen from the Indianapolis Colts, my dear, dear, dear friend. And God bless you. And thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on the Express. I'm also going to have you on my daytime show here in a not too distant future. And God bless you, sir. And I am so grateful to call you friend and honored always to have you on this show.
As always, Gary, I hope you had a great Easter, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, and tell your partner there that she does a great job at interviews. Tell Chuck Pagano, please win one this year so the hoodie doesn't hoist another one.
Will do, Gary.
I'm tired of watching the hoodie. I am so tired of watching the hoodie, I'm telling you. And I have nothing against Belichick, because his first job ever was with the Baltimore Colts with Ted Marchibroda. But I'm just tired of watching him. It's time for the horseshoe and the blue to be back in the winner's circle again.
I hear you, Gary. I will let Chuck know, and we'll talk here in the next couple days.
All right. God bless you, sir. And again, thank you all very much for listening in tonight to The Express. Again, stay in touch with me through my Facebook page at Gary Allen, ALAN, YouTube.com, Gary Allen The Express. This program will repeat itself this Thursday night on DiversityBroadcastNetwork.com, ProgressiveVoices.com, their demand and apps. Some really great news happening. And yes, the website is up. You can go to GaryAllenTalkShow.com. It's not complete, but it is up. So until next time, folks, please take care of yourselves and take care of each other.
You've been listening to The Express with Gary Allen. Join us here every Tuesday night at 10 for more captivating talk with Gary Allen. See you next time on The Express.